Okay, so now this is Acts chapter 27. We're going to read from verse 1 through to verse 26. You remember that Agrippa, Festus, and Bernice had concluded that there's no real case for Paul to answer, but he's appealed to Caesar, so he's got to go to Rome. And so when it had been decided that we would sail for Italy, they proceeded to deliver Paul and some other prisoners to a centurion of the Augustan cohort named Julius, and embarking in an Andromitian ship, which was about to sail to the regions along the coast of Asia, we put out to sea accompanied by Aristarchus, a Macedonian of Thessalonica. And the next day we put in at Sidon, and Julius treated Paul with consideration and allowed him to go to his friends and receive care. And from there we put out to sea and sailed under the shelter of Cyprus, because the winds were contrary. And when we had sailed through the sea along the coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we landed at Myra in Lycia. And there the centurion found an Alexandrian ship sailing for Italy, and he put us aboard it. And when we had sailed slowly for a good many days and with difficulty, had arrived off Cnidus, since the wind did not permit us to go farther, we sailed under the shelter of Crete off Salmone. And with difficulty sailing past it, we came to a place called Fair Havens, near which was the city of Lasea. When considerable time had passed, and the voyage was now dangerous, since the fast was already over, Paul began to admonish them and said to them, "Men, I perceive that the voyage will certainly be with damage and great loss, not only for the cargo and the ship, but also of our lives." But the centurion was more persuaded by the pilot and the captain of the ship than by what was being said by Paul, because the harbour was not suitable for wintering. The majority reached a decision to put out to sea from there, if somehow they could reach Phoenix, a harbour of Crete, facing southwest and northwest, and spending the winter there. When a moderate south wind came up, supposing they had attained their purpose, they weighed anchor and began sailing along Crete, close inshore. But before very long, there rushed down from the land a violent wind called the Euraquilo. And when the ship was caught in it and could not face the wind, we gave way to it and let ourselves be driven along, running under the shelter of a small island called Cloda. And we were scarcely able to get the ship's boat under control. And they had hoisted it up. And after they had hoisted it up, they used supporting cables in undergirding the ship, and fearing that they might run aground on the shallows of Syrtis, they let down the sea anchor, and in this way let themselves be driven along. The very next day we were being violently storm-tossed, and they began to jettison the cargo. And on the third day they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. And since neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, and no small storm was assailing us, from then on all hope of being saved was gradually abandoned. When they had gone a long time without food, then Paul stood up in their midst and said, "Men, you ought to have followed my advice and not to have set sail from Crete and incurred this damage and loss. Yet now I urge you to keep up your courage, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. For this very night an angel of God, to whom I belong and to whom I serve, stood before me, saying, 'Do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand before Caesar, and behold, God has granted you all those who are sailing with you. Therefore keep up your courage, men, For I believe God that it will turn out exactly as I have told you. But we must run aground on a certain island. And so it goes on. But this is amazing. Paul is there, and he stands up and he says, I told you so. I told you this is going to happen. But when he told them originally, he said, I perceive that there's going to be great loss of the cargo and of life. And here, at the bottom here, we find an angel has appeared to him and has said, behold, God has granted you all those who are sailing with you. So the angel appeared and says, no, Paul, when you said that there's going to be great loss of life, you were wrong, because I've given you all of the people who are on the ship. Perhaps Paul had been interceding and praying during that time, and finally the angel comes and says, I've heard your prayers, Paul. They're all going to be safe. And Paul stands up and he says, God has appeared. Isn't that amazing? The angel appears to him, and once again he says, don't be afraid, Paul. You're going to Caesar. God has determined it. It's going to happen. Don't be afraid. How often the Lord appears to Paul and says, don't be afraid, Paul. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. It's going to be all right. God's plans are going to happen. God's plans for each one of us will happen according to his plan and purpose for us. In Jesus' name.